Hello and welcome back to the Nobody Project. My name is Peter Kashiwagi. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. In this video, we will be going over the foundation of self-discipline, the pillars in which they stand, and why self-discipline is important and how it changed my life. Now, in the first video, I told you that I would be giving you a framework that you can tweak if you so choose. However, a framework without foundation is just scaffolding put together with bubblegum and tape. It will stand for a while, but it won't stand the test of time. So the best way to remedy that is to build a solid foundation and erect pillars in which you can then start to build your framework. Let's start with the foundation. It is very important that you recognize that self-discipline comes from a place of willing. You have to be willing to do it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to feel like doing it. It means that you have to want to change, that you have to want to improve yourself. Nothing I can say will make you do anything. Nothing anybody can say will change how your mind is wired. You have to change that. That is up to you. The first step of building a solid foundation is working on your willpower. Willpower, I believe, is a limited resource. Basically, it's decision-making power. That is why some of the most successful people on this planet wear only one outfit. Barack Obama, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg all wear the same things every day. They say, and I quote, "It removes the decision-making process in the morning. It keeps their willpower intact for decisions that are more important later on in the day." So that is your first step to a solid foundation, is work on your willpower. Now, something I did for the first 60 to 90 days of my self-discipline was maybe a little intense, but I'll share it with you. I took 5-minute cold showers every morning. Why? Because it took willpower to stay under that torrent of cold water for 5 minutes. It takes strength, inner strength, it takes resolve, and that builds your self-discipline, a foundation for your self-discipline. The second thing you need to work on for your foundation is your attitude. Your attitude is incredibly important. I know people personally that go through their lives with bitter excuses, constant complaining, just hating themselves, never trying to actually improve. Their attitude is, to use a PC word, garbage. So if you are a garbage person, recognize first of all that you are a garbage person. Look into yourself and don't be nice. Don't be nice to yourself. If you're trying to improve yourself, build yourself up by tearing yourself down first. Look inside and try to catch yourself when you're doing things on a daily basis. If you're constantly complaining, if you're constantly whining, if you're constantly judging people, then you might have a problem that you need to solve before you start taking on self-discipline. Your attitude. Now that we have a solid foundation, we need to start erecting some pillars. The first pillar of self-discipline is the actual definition of discipline. Self-discipline is really just a very intimate form of discipline. And discipline does not mean punishment. Discipline means training. So therefore, self-discipline is really self-training, or training of the self, however you want to look at it. And the reason why self-discipline is very important is that it's not coming from an outside source. When it's coming from an outside source, it's easy to shrug off and say you don't want to do it. But when it's coming from inside, from yourself, and you have that solid foundation of willpower and attitude, you will feel obligated to yourself and your future self to do what is necessary, regardless of whether you feel like it or not. That is the true definition of self-discipline. To do what is necessary, whether you feel like it or not. And the first step to disciplining yourself is forming healthy habits and creating a routine for yourself that you follow every day. When I say healthy habits, yes, I am talking about the generic exercise, meditate, eat well, wake up early and on time at the same time every day, go to sleep at the same time every day, have a regular night routine, have a regular morning routine, that kind of generic. But it works. It's generic, it's cliche because it works. Now, when you first start these habits, especially if they're healthy habits that you're not used to doing. For example, I quit cigarettes, and when I first started to quit cigarettes, it's a weird sentence to say, but when I first started to quit cigarettes, it was like rewriting a part of my reflexes. In other words, I was such a heavy smoker that I would wake up, have a cigarette, make some coffee, have a cigarette while that coffee is brewing, have a cigarette with the coffee, have a cigarette after the coffee, rinse and repeat for meals. And that kind of habit is incredibly difficult to break. Bad habits are easy to form and difficult to break. The thing about habits is that you have to recognize the pattern. It's cue, action, reward. My cue for smoking cigarettes was coffee and food. My action to then having coffee or food was smoking a cigarette. And the reward for that would be the pleasurable feeling of being distressed, or just the pleasurable feeling of having a cigarette. Now, you can't replace your cues. You can't avoid your cues unless they are obviously unhealthy and it's easy for you to do so. But with something like cigarettes, for example, the coffee and the food, I can avoid coffee. That's easy to avoid. But you can't avoid eating, right? So I would eat, and my action afterwards would be replaced by, let's say, something like a walk. And that would make me feel de-stressed. Not quite the same like cigarettes. It took a long time because I was trying to make a prefrontal cortex decision to rewire my basal ganglia. Your basal ganglia is responsible for things that are automatic, your habits. It's what controls your habits, like driving and writing with your right hand as opposed to your left hand. All of those things are hardwired into your basal ganglia. So when you make a prefrontal cortex decision to do something that is better for you, that you know is better for you, your basal ganglia is gonna fight it. It's not gonna feel right. It's not gonna feel good enough. The reward that you get by replacing the action with something else is not going to feel right. It's not going to feel right. But you have to fight it. You have to fight it, because after a while, your basal ganglia can be trained by your prefrontal cortex. But back to that foundation. You need willpower. You need an attitude check. So you have the power to say, no, I will just exercise after a meal or avoid coffee. You need willpower for these things. You need willpower to train your basal ganglia. You need willpower to build habits. Now, these things all come from within. You have to actually want to do them, not feel like doing them. Want to do them. That's a very different distinction to make. Feeling like doing something, like I mentioned before, you're making a prefrontal cortex decision to rewire your basal ganglia. It's not gonna feel right, but you have to want to do it. No matter what I say or anybody says, you have to want to do it. Like I said in the first video, nobody will care about your future as much as you do. The same is true for your health, your discipline. Nobody's going to care as much as you do. If you don't care at all, then you need to examine why it is that you don't care. Again, that's going back to looking at your inner self, looking at yourself. Break yourself down and then build yourself up. Look at yourself. Why don't you care? Why don't you care? You're eating unhealthy, you're smoking cigarettes, you're doing drugs. Why don't you care? Do you hate yourself? Are you sad inside? Are you just a bitter person? What can you do to improve yourself and start working from there? Work on your willpower, work on your attitude, and then erect this first pillar, which is defining self-discipline. That is pillar number 1. Now, for me, this was incredibly difficult. I struggled with this. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sit here and say that I was perfect at the first try, all right? I failed a couple of times. I had to start over many times. I had to sit down and meditate for weeks before I started to realize what drove me, what powered me, what motivates me. Motivation is fleeting, but drive is never ending. Drive is fuel. So finding my drive took some time. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's easy. It's not easy. Nothing worth having is easy. But that is the important thing. You need to fight for the things that are worth it. Because it's not just going to come to you. Nobody's going to come to you and say, here you go. You're disciplined now. It doesn't work that way. You need to build yourself from the bottom. And in order for you to get to that bottom, you need to destroy yourself. I don't mean sit there and be depressed like I did. Even after my attempted suicide, I sat there for weeks struggling with myself and not knowing why I did it or why I didn't do it, and just being in this limbo. And it was a very agonizing feeling. So I spent several hours going through motivational talks and self-discipline seminars and reading books about self-discipline, listening to audiobooks about self-discipline, and compiling all of this information that I am now sharing with you. That is how I got through building my foundation and erecting the first pillar. The second pillar is purpose. What is your purpose? If you don't understand your purpose, you don't understand your place in life. I don't just mean your ultimate purpose. My ultimate purpose is to educate people and to teach, to mentor. That is my purpose. It took me 27 years to realize my ultimate purpose, and I'm actually lucky because I realized it early. Most people don't realize it until well into their 30s. Honestly, I feel like a 40-year-old. I mean, look at how I dress. But what I mean by understand your purpose is, let's say you work at a grocery store. What is your purpose there? If the first thing that came to your mind is to collect a paycheck and go home, you're wrong. Your purpose there is to stock the shelves and help the store, the manager. That is your purpose there. Your job, your purpose is not just to collect a paycheck until you find something better. It's not just to complain constantly. Your purpose is to do the job that you were hired for and do the best you can. That is your purpose. So I was unemployed at the time. So it took me some time to actually find this purpose. And when I did, when I realized that this is my purpose, that teaching is my purpose, that mentoring is my purpose, things started to become a lot easier. So find your purpose. Define your purpose. What are you good at? What can you offer the world? Do it. What are you waiting for? Just do it. Don't give me excuses. Just do it. Now, along with purpose comes acknowledging the reason and need to change. This was very easy for me. The reason I needed to change was because I had attempted suicide, which is literally the worst thing anyone can do to themselves. But if you've built a solid enough foundation, you would have completed this step already. You would have already acknowledged the reason and need for your change. And along with that comes finding yourself. It's a beautiful thing when you find yourself, when you finally become comfortable with the person that you are, so that you can then build on it. You understand? Be comfortable with who you are. I know I said tear yourself down earlier, but I was talking about the bad things. Tear the bad things away. Try to stop the negativity. But be comfortable with who you are. Be comfortable, find yourself. And most important of all, in finding your purpose, is loving yourself. Love yourself, be good to yourself, take care of yourself. Because if you don't, nobody will. I didn't love myself, I didn't take care of myself, I wasn't good to myself. As a result, none of my friends cared. My family was barely engaging with me at all because I wouldn't engage with them. Because I didn't care about myself, I didn't love myself, so I couldn't love them. Do you understand? So finding your purpose goes beyond just, oh, this is what I do, this is what I should do, this is what I have to do. No. It's more than that. It's deeper than that. It's acknowledging the need to change. It's acknowledging the reasons why you need to change. It's finding yourself. It's loving yourself. That is what leads you to find your purpose. The third pillar of self-discipline is breaks and rewards. Yes, I've been hard on myself so far. We've been hard on ourselves so far. Let's give ourselves breaks. I, for example, take every Sunday off. Monday through Saturday, I have a strict schedule set for myself. I have a morning routine that I follow every day. I have 4 2-hour blocks scheduled time for whatever I need based on priority. And then I have a nightly routine that I follow. That is Monday through Saturday. On Sundays, however, I still do my morning routine. However, I do a modified version of my morning routine. I skip the exercise. That is my cheat day. I eat whatever I want. That is when I reward myself. That is when I let myself play video games and watch anime or just watch mindless things, movies, TV shows that I've been hoarding all week. So that is my reward. My reward are the Sundays. And I'm not just talking about rewarding yourselves for the week. I'm talking about also scheduling breaks. I talk about my 4 blocks of 2 hours, right? Now, in between those, there are breaks. It's a 15-minute break between every hour. So really, it's 45 minutes of work in an hour. I break for lunch, of course. I give myself a half hour in the beginning of the day for my morning routine to relax. That is my reward. I have my smoothie that I look forward to. I also use that as a reward. I exercise with the promise to myself that I get to have a delicious, healthy smoothie. And I drink that shake usually reading the news or catching up on some writing that I have to do or something relaxing to me. That's a half hour. And then an hour at the end of the day to just decompress and de-stress. The last block of the day is always a review for me. So after that block, I give myself an hour before I start my nightly routine where I just lounge. So give yourself time to rest. Give yourself rewards to look forward to. Nobody is a machine. You can't do things 100% power all the time. So the key is schedule your time wisely. Now, the final pillar is perhaps the most important one, and that is journal and forgiveness. Have a self-discipline journal. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. This is my self-discipline journal. I got this at Walmart. It was $8 on sale. I've been using it for a year now, almost. And I chronicle my successes as well as how I can improve. I don't talk about my failures. I talk about how I can improve. Now, you are going to fail. It's inevitable. We all fail. We all fall down. We all make mistakes. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and move on. Get up. Keep going. Never stop. Never give up. Never stop learning. Take it as a learning experience. I told you about my journal, and yes, I have even failed at writing in it sometimes. When I say have a journal, I don't mean an everyday journal. I don't mean a diary. You can, there's nothing wrong with having a diary. It's good to get your thoughts out. But I have failed to chronicle some things in here, and it's come back to bite me. And I've had to forgive myself countless times. Countless times. But you know, if you don't forgive yourself, if you don't move on, then you're just going to stay down and wallow in your mistake. You're going to wallow in your failure. And what good is that doing anybody? Certainly not doing you any good. So forgive yourself and improve on your failures. Improve on your shortcomings. Acknowledge, see, why did I fail? Why did I fall? What did I do wrong? Acknowledge it. Don't run away from it. I ran away from it for 10 years. 10, 12 years, I was running away from my mistakes. I was running away from my failures. That got me nowhere. It got me to want to kill myself. That's where it got me. So keeping a journal where you can chronicle your success, where you can acknowledge your shortcomings and where you need to improve is incredibly important. That is the final pillar of self-discipline, and perhaps the most important one, because you know, without this, there is no way to track your progress. You need to track your progress. Now, I use my birthday as a day to reflect on my life. I start first with the year I just had, and then I look back at my entire life, and then compile all of that and try to remove myself, look at it objectively, and see who I'm going to be a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, based on what I judge myself to be at that moment. In other words, on my birthday, I take a look at myself as I am. I take a look at what's happened the last year and then weigh it against the rest of my entire life, my past, make a judgment, a very harsh judgment usually, impartial, objective, and then based on that, try to look forward into who I'm going to be. That is what made me attempt suicide. Besides the fact that the tumor was working its dark magic, what truly made me try to commit suicide on my birthday was because I was having that reflective moment. And the tumor was working its dark magic, like I said, and making me skip all of the good things, all of the progress, all of the small incremental things that I had done every year, every month, every week, every day. The small things that build up. It made me skip that, and all I saw was darkness. So the image I created for myself at that moment was a dark, bleak, bitter man. So when I looked in the future, all I saw was darkness and bitterness. Nobody would want to live that life. But this year, on my birthday, I'm going to have this to look back on. I don't need to sit there and reflect on my year. I don't need to sit there and meditate about my life. I can read this book. I can read this journal about my successes, about my shortcomings and where I can improve, where I have improved, how much I have improved is in this book. I also have an agenda that I keep of all of the daily things that I do. I'll show you guys that later. And I can look back on that too, on my birthday. I'll spend the whole day just reading these journals. I have a gratitude journal, which is also another good thing. We're going to be talking about that in a habit video that I'm also going to be reading because I've kept this thing since I started self-discipline. So these things are important. Journal and forgiveness. Forgive yourself and chronicle your victories. Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. Don't forget to thumbs up, subscribe, share if you appreciate what I have to offer. Comment down below if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and I'll see you next week. Matane.